So welcome to this latest video on 162 Maths, and in this video we're going over the GCSE Maths past paper of June 2024 on the foundation tier, paper 1, which is a non-calculator paper. Now before we get started working through this paper, a little reminder that in the description I'll include a question breakdown so you can see what topic each question refers to. So if you get stuck on a particular question, you can see what topic to revise. And I'll also include the 162 Maths contents page, which gives you easy access to all lessons that go over the topics in greater detail, along with topic tests, audits and other exam paper walkthroughs. So let's get started on question 1. So question 1 asks us to divide 280 by 7. So for this, if I write 280 and divide that by 7, how many 7's going to 2? None, carry the 2. How many 7's going to 28? That will be 4, carry 0. And how many 7's going to 0? That will be 0, leaving me with an answer of 40. Next, it's asking me to work out 1062 minus 438. So if I correctly set out this question using columns and we're subtracting. Now the key rule with subtraction is that the top number needs to be bigger, so we may need to borrow. So 2 minus 8 is not possible, so let's do this here. Well, actually is possible, just not in this way of working with subtraction. So here I've got 12 minus 8, which leaves me with 4. 5 take away 3, which is 2. 0 is smaller than 4, so I need to borrow 1. And then 10 take away 6 gives me 4 gives me 6, so the answer is 624. Moving on to our next question, it says to complete the statement, so 2 meters is equal to how many centimeters? Well, there is 1 meter equals 100 centimeters, so if I double one, I double the other, giving me an answer of 200. Then it says 8 kilograms is how many grams? Well, 1 kg is equal to 1,000 grams, because kilo means 1,000. So 8, multiplying both those numbers by 8 gives me an answer of 8,000. Then for C, it says convert 24 kilometers into miles. So if we know that 8 kilometers is equal to 5 miles, let me just change that to an M. Then to get 24 kilometers, I need to multiply this number by 3, which therefore means I need to multiply this number by 3, giving me an answer of 15 miles, which I don't need the units, so I'll get rid of that M. Moving on to our next question, it says here is a centimetre grid. What percentage of the grid is shaded? Well, from this, if we count, we've got 8 out of 16, which gives me a half, and a half as a percentage is 50%. Then for question B, it says Kai has shaded 2 small squares on the centimetre grid. He wants 3/4 of the grid to be shaded. How many more small squares must he shade? Well, here we've got rows or columns of 4 rather. So what we need to do is shade in 3 rows or 3 columns. So I'm going to go for columns. So here, and the question's not physically asking you to shade them, it's asking for how many more. So how many have I actually shaded? I've shaded in 10. Then for question 4, it's asking us, here are 4 numbers, and it says use one number from the list to complete each statement. And it says the number closest to the value of 7 is, so out of these 4 numbers, which one is close to 7? It's going to be 6.92. Then for which number rounds to 7.2 to 1 decimal place? And that's going to be 7.18. And again, the reason for that, so if I just color code this, so in terms of closest to 7, this one is 0.08 away, this one is 0.27 away, this is 0.18 away, and this is 0.14 away, and you want the smallest number that's there. For the second one, in terms of which one rounded, so rounded to 1 decimal place, this one's going to be 6.9, this is going to be 7.3, this one here is going to be 7.2, and this one here is going to be 7.1, which is why our answer is 6.92 and 7.18 respectively. Moving on to question 4b, it says here are a list of 6 numbers, and it says use 2 numbers from the list to complete each statement. So 2 numbers that add to make -1. So you're looking for where you're adding 2 numbers to give you an answer of -1, in which you can write in any particular order -5 and 4. And the reason for that is because -5 plus 4 gives me -1. And again, if you did it the other way, plus and a minus become a minus, so that becomes 4 minus 5, which is -1. It then says which 2 numbers that multiply to make 20. So here we're looking for -10 and -2, because 2 minuses make a positive, and 10 times 2 gives me 20. Moving on to question 5a, it says here are 4 lines on a square grid, and it says which 2 lines are parallel. So 2 parallel lines are lines that will never cross if you extended each of those lines, and the 2 parallel lines here are going to be line Q and line S. So all I need to do is in the answer space just write down Q and S, and again you can write those letters in any order. Moving on to 5b, it says here is a different grid. It says there are 4 points on this grid that each have both coordinates that are whole numbers, and x ordinate plus a y ordinate equals 3. Plot 4 points on the grid. So using these numbers, so this number, and let's go for these numbers, what I'm wanting to do is to add these numbers together to make 3. So I can make 3 by 0 and 1. I can make 3 by adding 2 and 1. I can make 3 by adding 1 and 2, and another by adding 0 and 3. And all I then need to do is plot those 4 points. I don't need to draw a line because the question asked me to plot it, but I would need to plot those 4 points to get 4 marks. Moving on to our next question, it says write down the value of 3 squared. Well, 3 squared is 3 times 3, and 3 times 3 gives me 9. Then it says write down the value of the square root of 144. So what number multiplied by itself gives us 144, and that's going to give me an answer of 12. It then says work out the value of 2 to the power 4. Well, 2 to the power 4 is 2 times 2 times 2 times 2. Well, 2 times 2 is 4, 2 times 2 is 4, and 4 times 4 gives me an answer of 16. Moving on to our next question, it says at a restaurant, vegan pizzas have two different toppings. The toppings are sweet corn, mushrooms and peppers. Complete the table to list all the possible pairs of toppings you can have. Now for this, it's not a case of sweet corn and mushrooms is the same as mushrooms and sweet corn, so we're not just simply swapping the letters around. We actually need 2 different sets of 2 different letters, so you can have mushrooms and peppers, and you can have sweet corn and peppers. And again, if you've wrote PM or PS, then that's absolutely fine. You would get the 1 mark for that question. Now moving on to question 7b, it says at a restaurant dough balls can be ordered in small portions and large portions. So a small portion consists of 6 dough balls and a large portion consists of 10 dough balls. A group of people want to order exactly 44 dough balls. Show how they can do this. Now for this particular question, I would probably assume using a method of lowest of a common multiple. So here if we go for the small, so in terms of the small, I can order 6, 12, 18, 24, 30, 36 and 42. I'm only going to go up to 44, so that's the closest number. Then for large, I can order in multiples of 10, so that's 10, 20, 30, 40, and that's it. And then so what I'm wanting is to find a combination of these 2 numbers that add together to make 44. So using the red numbers or the blue numbers, what combination can I make to get 44? Well, I can make 44 by adding 20 and 24. So to get 24 using the small, I need to order 1, 2, 3, 4 portions, and to get 20 dough balls from the large, I need to order 2 portions. So the answer then is for 2. Moving on to question 8, it says apples are 25 pence each and oranges are 60 pence each. Salma has £10 to buy apples and oranges. She buys 9 apples and as many oranges as possible. How many oranges does she buy? Well, if she's buying 9 apples, let's first of all work out the cost of that. So that's going to be 9 multiplied by 0.25. So if I want to do, as this is on a non-calculator paper, I just do 9 lots of 0.25, and obviously you can use multiplying, that's entirely up to you. But in terms of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, so just one more. And then adding that up. Now the quickest way of adding this up is knowing that 4 of them equal 1, and so that's going to be 2.25. So that's going to equal £2.25. Then we want to work out how much change we get. So the change is going to be 10 minus £2.25, which leaves me with a total of £7.75. Now what I'm wanting to do now is then work out how many oranges I can then buy with £7.75. Now for this, what you could do is you could either do £7.75 divided by 0.6, which doesn't look great. So if I wrote that as a fraction, then I would get this. And then what you then want to do potentially is convert this into a whole, the denominator into a whole number by multiplying by 10. So if I multiply both those by 10, I would get 77.5 divided by 6. And from this, you can then do 6 divided by 7, 7.5. How many 6s go into 7? That would be 1, remainder 1. How many 6s go into 17? That would be 2, remainder 5. And how many 6s go into 56? That's going to be 9. So you're looking around 12 oranges. Now, alternately, another method you could use is basically that if we've got £7.75, then 10 oranges would equal £6, leaving me with £1.75. And then from £1.75, how many oranges can you buy at 60 pence? Well, it's going to be 60 pence, then £1.20, and then £1.80. So I can only buy 2 extra oranges. So if I add 2 and 10 together, I'm still going to get the answer of 12. Moving on to question 9, it says Alina and Sue play netball. The number of goals they score in 8 games are shown below, and the question for A is asking us to complete the table. So in terms of Alina, her range, so to work out the range, it's the biggest number minus the smallest, in which for Alina the smallest number is 12 and the largest number is 26. So for that, all I then need to do is to do 26 minus 12, which gives me an answer of 14. Then to work out Sue's median, that's just the middle number. So to work out the middle number, if I just check that they're all in order, which they are. So I take one from the top, one from the bottom, and just wait until I get either 1 or 2 numbers in the middle. So the 2 numbers in the middle are 20 and 21. So which number goes in between that? That's going to be 21. It then says which player scored more consistent number of goals, tick which box. Now in terms of consistency, what you're wanting is the smallest range. So who has the smallest range out of Alina and Sue? Well, the answer is going to be Alina, and the reason for that is you can just say is that she has a smaller range. Then moving on to question 10, it's asking us to work out 35% of 1,200. Well, if 35% could be made from 10%, 3 lots of 10% and 1 lot of 5%. So 10% is where you just move the decimal point 1 place in, so that's going to equal 120. and we've got 120 and 120, and if 10% is 120, 5% is going to be half that, which is 60, and then all I then need to do is add those numbers up, in which I get an answer of 420. Then moving on to our next question, which is question 11. It says a window cleaner uses this formula where C is the cost in pounds for the customer, W is the number of windows that are being cleaned. So for question 8 says how much does it cost for 6 windows to be cleaned? So in this particular question, what we have is that W is going to equal 6. So here we've got W equals 6. So all I've got to do is substitute W equals 6 into this formula. So C is going to equal 2 times 6 plus 5, which is 12, plus 5, which is 17. Then for question 11b, it says the cost of another customer is £24. Show why this cost must be incorrect. Well, for this, if the cost is £24, let's make the formula equal to that. So 2W plus 15 equals 24. And then all we need to then do is solve this equation. So we get rid of the 5 by doing the opposite, which is take away 5. So 2W equals 19, that will be. And then to work out W, I divide by 2 and I get 9.5. Now, the reason why it must be incorrect, because no window cleaner is going to clean only half a window. And so as you cannot clean half a window, well, although argument members may suggest that you can, this must be incorrect. So something along those lines would be absolutely fine. Moving on to question 12, it says 2 bags X and Y each contain coloured discs. In bag X you've got 7/20 of the discs are red, and in bag Y 2/5 of the discs are red. Which bag has a greater proportion of discs X or Y? So let's have a look. Now, one way to do this when you're comparing two fractions together is to either get the same fraction or to convert them as decimals, and it's entirely up to you which one you choose. So here we've got 7/20, which is bag X, and we've got bag Y, which is 2/5. So here, looking at the denominators, can I make 5 into 20? Well, yes, I can. So to do that, I multiply by 4. So I times by 4 on the numerator, which gives me 8. And then now that the denominator is the same, I can easily compare these two fractions. So comparing these two fractions, I can see that Y is going to have the greater proportion. So the answer then is Y. Alternately, you could have converted them into a decimal, which if you did, I'd end up with 0.35 for this one and 0.4 for that one. And there you go, you can see that 0.4 is quicker. Now, how did I get that so quickly? Well, 7/20, if I got the denominator over 10, would be 3.5. And then all I then need to do is move the decimal point one place, which gives me 0.35. For 2/5, another way you can do it is to do division. So here, how many 5s go into 20? None. Carry the 2. How many 5s go into 20? 4. And as you can see, that's where I've got 0.4 from. Moving on to question 3, it says 2 friends share £240 in the ratio of 1 to 3. Work out the largest share. So looking at this, we're sharing a ratio from an amount. So 1 plus 3 is 4. And then 240 divided by 4 is going to give me 60. So that's what equals 1 part. So therefore 3 parts, which is the larger part, is going to be 3 times 60, which gives me an answer of 180. Moving on to question 13b, it says that a tennis player wins or loses matches in the ratio of 5 to 9. What fraction of the matches do they win? Well, looking at the ratio, we've got 5 for win, so the numerator is going to be 5, and the denominator is the total number of parts. So the total number of parts is 5 plus 9, which is 14, and then just check, see if can you simplify it? No. So my answer then is just 5/14. Moving on to question 14, it says here is a multiplication table. It says use the table to answer the following questions. So for this, it's asking me to work out what 3,843 divided by 63 is. So what I'm looking for is what number multiplies by 63 to give me 3,043. So looking at the 63 column, I can see that it's here, which then leads to 61. So the answer then is going to be 61. Moving on to question B, it says work out 6.1 multiplied by 6.7. Now as you can see, in terms of the information, if I turn both those numbers into 61 times 67, and to do that, what I've done is I've moved the decimal place one place in this number, one place in this number, so I've moved it a total of 2 places. Now looking at the grid above, 61 times 67 is 4,087. So I write 4087, and now what I need to do is move the decimal point back 2 places, which gives me an answer of 40.87. Then finally we just need to work out the answer to 63 times 66. Now if I go back to the table, and again for part C I want to do 63 multiplied by 66, and what you're looking for here is the closest possible number. So here I know that 63 times 65 is 4095. So then to get 63 times 66, all I then need to do is add an extra 63. So if I do 4095 added together to 63, and then just do the addition, I get 8, I get 5, carry the 1, I get 1, and I get 4. So it's 4158. Again, if you did it a different way, that's entirely up to you. That's absolutely fine, but I certainly would use the table above. Now for question 15, it says that these 2 triangles are congruent. Now congruent basically means that they are identical. And so it says write down the value of x. Well, here on this triangle we've got a side of 8, 5, 8 and 5. So the missing side must be 6. So I just need to write 6 centimeters there. Then for question 16, it says C and D are positive numbers. C is even and D is odd. Tick a box for each of the expressions. Now for these particular questions, what I would do is I would generally pick an example. So pick an even number for C. So let's say C is 10, and an odd number, let's go for 5, just a random odd number. So if I do C plus D, then I get 10 plus 5, which is 15, and 15 is an odd number, so I'm ticking that one. For 4C, I'm doing 4 times 10, which is 40, and that is going to be a even number. Then for C over D, I'm doing 10 divided by 2. Well, that's going to be a case of 5. So 5 is an odd number. And however, let's have a look if that is the case. So what happens if I had 16 over 2? Then that would be 8, and that's even. So therefore, as you can see, that could be, can't tell. So it could be either or. Now, when you're doing this, it is important that you pick potentially 2 different sets of numbers and hope that it will give you an answer to your question. So it's worth not just going on face value, particularly for ones that you're not too sure about. So for C over D, try and pick 2 versions of a number just to see if your end result is the same. Now moving on to question 17, it says a linear sequence has a first term of 10 and the first term plus the second term equals 39, and the question is asking us to find the 5th term. So if I just draw 5 dashes representing the 5 terms, this is the number that I want. So it tells us that the first term is 10, and it also tells us that if we add these 2 numbers here, we get an answer of 39. So in terms of this, what number plus 10 gives me 39? Well, that's going to be 29. And then as it's a linear sequence, what I've got to do is find the difference between this number and this number. So to get from that number, I need to add 19. So that means to get from one term to the next, I need to add 19. Now the easiest way of adding 19 is to add 20 and then take away 1. And so that's what I'm going to do. So 29 plus 20 is 49, take away 1 is 48. 48 plus 20 is 68, take away 1 is 67. And 67 plus 20 is 87, take away 1 is 86. So my answer then is 86. Moving on to question 18, it's asking me to work out the area of a triangle. Well, the area of a triangle is using the formula of base times height divided by 2. So to work out the base times the height, I do that. So I'm going to do 6.3 times 20 divided by 2. Now if 10 times 6.3 is 63, by moving the decimal point one place to make it bigger, then all I then need to do is double that to get 20, and doubling that gives me 126. So it's going to be half of 126. So again, if you don't know what half of 126 is, use the bus stop method, in which I've got how many 2's going to 1, 0, carry the 1, how many 2's going to 12, 6, and how many 2's going to 6, 3, leave me with an answer of 63 square centimetres. Moving on to question 19, it says that a vector translate A to B of minus 3, 7. Write down the vector that goes in the opposite direction. Now for this, all we need to then do is basically just flip the signs of the numbers. So minus 3 becomes positive 3 and positive 7 becomes minus 7. It then says for question 20, the attendance for a rugby match is 8,400 people to the nearest 100. Write down the minimum possible attendance. So for this, we can see that the rounding error is 100 people. So what I need to do to find the upper and lower bound is I halve this number, so I'm adding, subtracting 50. Now because I want the minimum possible number, I'm going to take away 50. So it's 8,400 minus 50, which gives me an answer of 8350. It then says write down the maximum possible attendance. Well, there I'm going to add 50, which gives me now for this, now because it's to the nearest 100, we've got 8450. Now the problem with this is that the error interval is going to look something like this, and I think I've gone a bit crazy with my numbers there, so let me just change that. So 8350 and it's 8450 is this here. So A has got to be smaller than 8450. Now because we're talking about people and humans, you can't have half, so you can't have decimal numbers. So we're looking for the smallest integer that is less than, or the biggest integer that is smaller than 8,450, which in this case is going to be 8449. So if it was continuous data, we were looking at 8,450, but because we were looking at integers and whole numbers and discrete numbers, then we need to take away 1, so that's why my answer is 3449, not 3450. Moving on to question 21, it says the table shows the number of workers at a company in different years. The time series graph is drawn to represent the data. The first 4 points are plotted. And for question A, it's asking us to complete the graph. So if we complete the graph, then what we should have is our next point is 2019, which is at 62. So I need to find 62, and you want to try and be as accurate as possible. So each block represents 1, so it's going to be there. Then the next one is at 70, so 2020. Oh, what I'm doing there. So for 220, 2021 and 2022 from the table is 70, 76 and 80. So just need to plot those points. So 2020 it is at 70, which is going to be here. Then at 2021 it's 76, that's 3 squares up, and then 2022 it's at 80, which is there. Then we just need to then join those points up with straight lines. So again, I'm just going to just race ahead in terms of this, but we then just need to join those points up with straight lines. And again, please do use a ruler, but it should look something that looks like this. And then it then says estimate the number of workers for 2023. So look, as you can see the trend is going up. And looking at the difference, if we go back to the table, for the most recent years we've got +6, then it's +4. So you're probably looking at an answer of around about +2 maybe. But in terms of the mark scheme, where you've plotted your points, they would accept any answer between 82 to 90. So again, the reason why they've got 90 is if you look at the differences between the numbers. So here I've got +5, here I've got +8, here I've got +10, here I've got +10, and here I've got +8. So when you are trying to figure out where it is, you can pretty much choose generally any of those numbers, which is why that range. But I would say a number that's close to 82 will probably be as accurate as you can. Moving on to question 22, it says here is a cone, and it says to the curved surface area of the cone is pi r L, where r is the radius and L is the slanted height. Beth tries to work out the curved surface area in terms of pi, and she says she's made a mistake. What mistake has she made? So let's have a look at this then. So looking at the diagram, if we actually, now one way to find the error is to actually work it out yourself. So here, looking at this, I've got L is equal to 13, height which is equal to 12, and R which is equal to 5. So working out pi r L, what I would get is pi times R, which is 5, times L, which is 13. Now if I compare that to what Beth did, I can see straight away where the error was, and the error is the fact that she should have used 13, not 12. So all we need to then do is just write that down. So just say that she used the incorrect L value, and you could say something along the lines of should have used 13 instead of 12. So something along those lines would be absolutely fine. Moving on to question 22b, it says Adam uses pi equals 3. Estimate the area of the base of the cone. Now the base of the cone is a circle, and the area of a circle is pi r squared. Now if pi is 3, and remember that r is equal to 5, then what we end up with is pi times 5 squared, and 5 squared is 25, so that leaves me with an answer of 25 pi. And if pi is 3, that's 25 times 3, which gives me an answer of 75. It then says for part 22c, Beth uses 3.14 as an estimate for the area of the base of the cone. Is Beth's estimate more or less than Adam's estimate? Well, the answer that we need to take is more than, and the reason for that is because we've used a bigger value for pi. Now moving on to question 23, it says each day Eric drinks a quarter of a pint of milk in the morning and half a pint of milk in the afternoon. How many pints of milk does he drink in 30 days? So for this, what we want to do for this particular question is see how much does Eric drink in one day. So drinks in one day, and that's going to be a quarter plus a half, so it's going to be 3/4 pints. Now for this, what we're wanting to do is to work out 30 days. So what I need to do is do 30 multiplied by 3/4. Now the easiest way to multiply a whole number by a fraction is to turn the whole number into a fraction. So if I do that, I then got two fractional multiplication questions. So I multiply the numerators together, which is 3 times 30 over 1 times 4, and that's going to give me 90 over 4. Now all that's left for me to then do is divide 90 by 4, in which I can do that using the bus stop method. So how many 4s go into 9? That's going to be 2, remainder 1. How many 4s go into 10? That's going to be 2, remainder 2, which I just extend the decimal point. And then how many 4s go into 20? That's going to be 5. So the answer then is going to be 22.5. So I just write that down, 22.5 pints. Or you can write it as a fraction as 22.5. And again, don't forget the units, as the units are not mentioned in this question and could be worth that extra mark. Well, not extra mark, the final mark. Moving on to question 24, it says solve 7x minus 22 equals 4x plus 29. So here we've got a double-sided equation. Now when you've got a double-sided equation, you want to take the smallest x from both sides. So the smallest x from both sides is the 4. So if I take away 4x from both sides, I end up with 3x minus 22 equals 29. Then I get rid of the 22 by adding 22. So 3x equals, and that's going to be 51. And then all that's left for me to then do is do 51 divided by 3, which I can leave it as that. Or I can attempt to work it out, in which it should divide. So how many 3's go into 5? That's 1, remainder 2, and that's 7. So the answer then is 51 over 3, or 17. And again, I'll probably opt for 17 as a better answer. Then for question 25, it says in a house, the floor area of the living room is 26 square meters. The floor area of the kitchen is 16.4 square meters. Express the area of the living room as a fraction of the area of the kitchen. Give your answer in its simplest form. So for this, we want the kitchen over the living room. So here what we've got is we've got 26 over 16.4. Now with this, what we don't want is we don't want decimals in there. So to convert this, what we can do is multiply both numbers by 10. So that gives me 260 over 164. Then what we want to do is simplify, so we can both see that they're both even. So if I halve both numbers, I get 130 over 82, in which I can simplify that further. So again, I've got even numbers, in which I've got 65 over 41. Now that doesn't simplify because 41 is a prime number. So you can either leave your answer like that, or you can write it as a mixed number, which is 1 and 24 over 31. So any of those two variations would be absolutely fine. Moving on to question 26a, it says represent x's between -2 and 4 exclusive of those two numbers on a number line. So for this, we draw a circle on -2, we draw a circle on 4, and we draw a connecting line between the two. Now it's just to check to see if I need to colour those in, which I don't, because there's no equal line underneath those inequalities, so that would be correct. Then for B, all we then need to do is get y the subject. So first things first, what we need to do is take away the 14. So I get 5y is greater or equal to -3, and then get rid of the 5 by dividing by 5. So y is greater or equal to -3/5. Then moving on to our last question, it says to describe the single transformation from A to B. Now for this, hopefully you would have established that this is an enlargement. So the first mark will come from an enlargement. Now when you're looking at enlargements in your scale factor, now we can see to get from A to B that the size has gone down, and it's gone down by a half. So the scale factor is a half, and then all that's left for me to then do is find the center. Now to find the center of enlargement, all I need to do is connect two of the corresponding parts together. So if I just pick 2 points, I'm going to go for these two, and what I'm going to do is just draw projection lines from each of those. And from doing that, I can see that those two projection lines meet at this point here. So I just need to write down the coordinate, which is 1 and -7. And there we go.